Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. Going to give a couple minutes just to make sure everyone can get joined. We'll get started in a few, but if you want to pop in the chat, just where you are tuning in from and what organization you're with, that's always fun to see. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I was just telling Nathan that it is cold now. We've officially hit fall, I think. I don't know if I'm happy about it or not yet. 40 degrees, felt very cold this morning, but you know, could be worse, I guess.
I think we have a low of 40 something today, and it's glorious to go outside and the air is like crisp and a little chilly. It's great. Better than the like scorching, melting heat that we've had for months on end.
All right, it looks like somebody said the chat function was off, but it shouldn't be. Let's see here. Let's see, I just popped a message right in the chat. Let me know if you guys can see it and you can chat back. Maybe, maybe not. Anyone who's joining, if you want to go ahead and throw in the chat where you're tuning in from. I think we were having maybe a few issues, having problems, people not being able to see the chat and not being able to respond. Let's see here.
I can see it, but I can't send everyone a message. So I wonder if there's a setting or something.
Okay, let's see. Well, I will play around with that. I don't want to waste too much time on screen doing that, but I will fix that. If not, there is the Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout, you can just drop it in the Q&A. But to get us started, again, thank you guys so much for joining us. I know it is heavy fundraising season for all of you now, as we're heading into the final weeks, I should say, of the year. And so I know you're trying to hit it hard with that fundraising. So I'm pleased to welcome Nathan from NextAfter to give this webinar today. I will kick it over to you now, Nathan.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here with you and with all of you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And while I do that, I'll just say a few words here. I love talking about year end. We were just chatting beforehand offline for a moment, that this is probably I think this is the third time now I've gone through this webinar with a different group. And so you're probably right in the sweet spot where like by round like 2 or 3, like it's just getting better and better. And then after that, it's like kind of same old, same old. So you're getting probably like the prime placement of this year end webinar because it's dialed in. I'm still excited about it. And we're going to do some good work here. So we're talking all about year-end fundraising today, specifically digital year-end fundraising. Even more specific than that, we're really going to look at some strategies around building out your email communication during the year-end season. There is so much we could dive into. We have a full course that's about 4 hours that dives really deep into how to go build your email campaign during the year-end season. We don't have that much time right now, so I'm going to kind of give you a high-level sort of flyby view. But there's going to be a lot of details still and a lot of actionable things. So make sure you pay close attention. We're going to move fast. If you've got questions, commentary, drop them in the chat. If we can get that working, I'll try to keep my eye on that as well. Before we dive in, I do want to just share this kind of like little icebreaker thing. And if the chat works, you can jump in and you can respond here. But this was, so last night, it was like 8:30 or something, and I wanted ice cream and we're out of ice cream. So I made an ice cream run. And down the street, here's what I saw. So this house in our neighborhood, fully decked out with Christmas lights and everything on October 17th. So they're ready to go for the holiday season. I'm curious when you actually start decorating for the holidays. But it's clear that this is now starting to be top of mind for people. Again, if the chat opens up, let me know when you actually start decorating for the holidays. This is no judgment zone. So if you're all in on just whenever you feel like it, that's awesome. If you're a hardcore, like must be after Thanksgiving, that's fine. I say let's spread the holiday cheer. But let's dive in. So when I initially put this presentation together about how should we think about year end, how do we focus on really improving our year end communication, I wanted to come up with this sort of like cool, sort of epic analogy as to how we can think differently about our programs and our year-end campaigns. And so my default is to think about Star Wars because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And so here's a picture of me on my iPad here. and I'm sketching out a map of like the whole Star Wars universe, and you've got all the different regions, you've got the core worlds, you got the outer rim, you got the unknown regions. Those green dots are like, these are your donors, and they're at all these different places throughout the galaxy, and we're trying to get them all to the same place, back to the core, and then ultimately they'll give. And as I'm diving into this, I'm thinking about like what's called a Sith wayfinder or a Jedi wayfinder that can help you find a single point in the galaxy from anywhere you're at. And I got way too far into this. Like this is too much. There might be like one or two, hardcore Star Wars nerds on the call today that know anything about what I'm talking about. But I'm guessing 99% of you are not tracking with me on this deep dive on a Star Wars analogy. And I think there's actually a really important lesson even in this, which is that as fundraisers, we have a certain view of our organization. We have a certain view of our cause that we serve. You've literally given your career, at least at this point in time, to serving a particular cause. And there's aspects that matter to you more than others that you get probably fixated on or focused on. And your lens and your viewpoint is going to really resonate with a certain amount of donors. But it might not be everything to every other donor. So the point here is this: as we craft our campaigns, we have to cast sort of a wide net with a wide variety of different angles to articulate our value proposition. And my good friend John Powell came up with this analogy that I think is really good. The most brilliant diamonds and the best diamonds, even the most expensive ones, are the ones, not just ones that are the biggest, they're the ones that have the best cuts, and they use a variety of angles and facets to reflect the light to the middle so that it reflects and shines most brilliantly. And we want to do the same thing in our year-end campaigns, using a variety of different communication types to fully articulate why someone should give, using cultivation, using appeals, using different types of stories, using different voices and senders to paint this really nice and beautiful picture as to why someone should give. And then ultimately making sure that people give before the deadline. We use this tool both in some of the training that we use, as well as the work we do with organizations on a daily basis. That looks a little bit like this, is sort of a zoomed in version, but it's our year-end email timeline. And on this timeline, there are 17 different types of emails that you can sort of pick and choose and use to build out your year-end email campaign. Now, not everyone is at the point where you should be sending 17 different emails over the course of the season. Maybe for you, you're just starting out with actually putting together a focused year-end campaign, and you need maybe 4 or 5 emails. Others of you might be a little bit more sophisticated, and you can do 7 or 8. Some of you are like really ready to go. You've got lots of segment sophistication. You can do 17. I want you to sort of pick and choose where you're at. It's not, my desire isn't to go make sure you send all 17 of these, but to give you a lot of different options of things you can use to tell your story well over the course of the year-end season. Now, you're here because you think year-end is important and you want to find new ways to increase and improve your results. But I still want to spend a moment talking about why you should care so much about the year-end season. Now, at NextAfter, we really do one primary thing, which is we help nonprofits grow their digital fundraising. But we do that in 3 main ways. We are a research lab where we go conduct research to try to understand what are nonprofits doing to try to raise more money. And then we take the best ideas that we learn there and we put them to the test through our digital first agency. So we're working with about 45 different nonprofit organizations, doing lots of different things, lots of different, sending emails, running advertising, focusing on donor acquisition, cultivation, the whole works. But everything is really, really driven by testing and optimization. So we test the ideas that we see, we put them to the test to see what actually works to grow giving. And then everything we learn from our research lab and from our digital first agency work and from optimization and testing, we then turn into training materials like this webinar and other courses and tools and ebooks and things like that, because we want to go equip you and as much of the nonprofit space as we can with what we're learning actually works to grow giving. I share all this because we conducted this study a couple of years ago with our friends at Virtuous, where we set out to understand what are nonprofits doing as it relates to multi-channel communication. And then we took a specific look at the year-end season to try to understand what revenue comes in, what are people doing as far as their communication for online donors, offline donors, et cetera. And the starting point was looking at how much is at stake in this season. And really what we found, and this is in 2020, so 35% of online revenue for the year came in during a 45-day period. That's from November 15th through the end of the year. That's basically the time frame that we benchmark the year-end season. So when I talk about year-end, I'm really talking about those 45 days. Fast forward a year, here's what we found last year, was that upwards of 45% of online revenue for the year came in just in this 45-day window of the year-end season. Now, that's just our data from clients that we work with, the nonprofits that we're working with on a daily basis, but others have found some similar metrics. Neon One has found that 1/3 of annual giving occurs in December. So not the 45-day window, but a 30-day window. Our friends at Bloomerang and Pursuant have found that 50% of nonprofits receive a majority of their annual donations from October through December, so in Q4, which is like a little bit different, but it's not really different. All these things, so much at stake during this year-end season that we have to make sure that we come to the table with tested and proven strategies to be present with our donors and lead them towards giving. However, here's what we found. 37% of organizations sent nothing to their postal donors during the year-end season. 37%, that's quite a lot. Just abandoning donors who have been generous to them during the year, sent them nothing. And the same is true for online donors. It's a smaller number, but you might expect it's easier to send more communication to an online donor through an online channel. 13% of organizations sent nothing to an online donor during the year-end season. So we have to come to the table and be present with our donors during the season if you expect to see results. We can't sit out. We've got to come and be present. And I do want to address a common misconception. I think this has changed over the past few years. It seems like more people are coming to this understanding of really where should the priority be during the year-end season. But let's look at some numbers. Giving Tuesday is an important day of the year-end season. There's a lot of opportunity on Giving Tuesday to activate donors. In fact, our friends at Classy have found that there might be some opportunities specifically on Giving Tuesday for activating brand new donors. So there's opportunity. We found that during the year-end season, 4% of online year-end revenue comes in on Giving Tuesday, which is not a small amount. It's a lot of potential revenue. But if you compare that to the last day of the year, 20% of online year-end revenue comes in one day on December 31st. And if you then go zoom out and you look at the full last week of the year, 47% of online year-end revenue comes in during the last week of the year alone. We like to look at conversion rates and percent lift and percent decrease, and so we'll do that here. December 31st represents 334% more revenue than Giving Tuesday. The last week of the year represents 924% more revenue than Giving Tuesday. I'm not here to say that Giving Tuesday is something you shouldn't care about. You should. We have to get it in the right priority. As we look at what organizations are doing, here's what we found. 20% sent mail during the week of Giving Tuesday. And 57% sent emails during the week of Giving Tuesday. So keep those two numbers in mind. You get 20%, 57%. Now we're going to look at the last week of the year. The numbers really don't change all that much. 18% sent mail, 58% sent email during the last week of the year. And by looking at this data and a wide variety of others, looking at how many emails are coming in at what time and who sends what during which weeks and all that stuff, we've really found that there's a minimal difference in how nonprofits treat these 2 weeks, despite there being such a big difference in the revenue that's at stake. So here's where I want to start, kind of a bare minimum year-end fundraising playbook for you is to, one, send something to your donors. I don't care what you send, just send something. Be present in their inbox with your emails during the year-end season. That should be point number one. Number two, plan to send during the last week of the year. And then third, send during Giving Tuesday, and do these things in this order, in this priority. So as you're making your plans, plan to send one thing, and then plan your last week of the year, and then plan Giving Tuesday. Make sure you get everything in the right priority, because this is where the most opportunity lies. Now, that's a very simple approach just to get you started. You might be saying, I've got that stuff. We already do last week of the year stuff. We're active on Giving Tuesday. I'm already planning to send something. What else you got for me? Well, let's dive in. Let's look at how do you tell your whole story over the whole season without just sending like 100 million donation appeals. Because it's the last thing we want to do is burn out our file and burn out our donors during the season by sending the same kind of thing over and over and over and over. And so we're going to look at three specific categories of communication that you should build into your email fundraising timeline this year-end season. And we're going to start with this: priming and framing. And you kind of get the idea by just this picture, but I do not like painting. We do a lot of DIY kind of projects in our house. Painting is always frustrating, particularly priming before you paint is just, I just hate it. I just don't like it. And I'm fully aware that it's necessary, that you've got to put the primer on because it's going to make the actual coat of the color of paint that you want to put on the wall, it's going to make it that much more effective. So you don't need 3 or 4 different coats. You might only need 1 or 2 coats if you've primed well. And the same thing is true in our fundraising. Priming makes what comes next all the more effective. Here's a more technical definition. Priming is the process whereby a person is exposed to a stimulus that influences how they think or how they feel later on. And so priming emails, and we'll look at some examples, are really like cultivation. And those kind of cultivating emails are going to make the appeals that you send later in the season all the more effective. Let's look at an example. Priming email number 1, and there's a wide variety of things that you can do to prime people for an appeal that will come later. But here's one I'd love for you to plan to build into your timeline: a survey email. The goal of this is not to get a bunch of more like demographic info about your donors to build a bunch of new segments. Here's what I want you to do with it. I want you to use this survey to build alignment with your donors and potential donors. Get them to lean into you as you lean into them. And don't think about asking for a donation in this email. The point of this email is not to make a donation appeal. It's to give your donors a voice. It's to get them to understand what's kind of going on in this season related to your cause. It's giving them a chance to speak into the work that you're doing so that they're leaning into you. And when they do that, it's going to make an appeal that comes later all the more effective. Let's look at what this looks like in reality. This organization, you can see on the left, the full length of the email. It's a plain text style email. It says, "Dear supporter, you need to make politicians listen in 2021 because taxpayers are getting squeezed hard." I think regardless of your political stance, no one wants to pay more taxes necessarily. And so they're sending out this survey to see how their ideal donor feels about some different policy issues. And so they send the survey. You've got a link here. You scroll down to the bottom. You've got another call to action link at the bottom, and you go to a basic SurveyMonkey survey. And it looks like this. You've got 24 questions, so actually quite a lot. It's all multiple choice, but still 24 questions to go through. And all the questions look like this, where they're making different statements about different policy ideas. And this is for people in Canada, asking about how do they feel about this particular issue? Is it a high priority? Is it a low priority? And so by the end of this survey, you've gone through and you've told this organization all the things that you value, that you care about, and you want to see change and you want to see impacted during the next year, which is building this affinity. It's causing people to lean in. It's causing people to trust that your organization can actually make an impact on these things. So much so that instead of just a normal confirmation page, you can use what we call an instant donation page, where right on the confirmation page, you're saying, "Thanks for completing the survey." And now they've just told you all the stuff that they value and they want to see change. You can go make a clear donation appeal on the page, talking about the work that you're going to do to make an impact on this cause. And scroll down, you've got a donation form right there on the page. And there's an opportunity to then lead from a cultivation email to a donation appeal on this instant donation page without just sending more email appeals. Does it make sense? I hope it does. We can lean into priming as a means to start to get someone to take some next steps. Here's another example of a priming email. And this is a Thanksgiving email. Now, whether you celebrate Thanksgiving or not, the point of this email is to thank donors for their ongoing support. We may have some Canadians on the call and you just had Thanksgiving like a week ago. So even if you didn't send a Thanksgiving email a week ago, you can still thank donors and give them credit for the work that's going on. The point of this is to express gratitude, and do not ask them for money in this email. This is purely a cultivation email. Let's look at an example. This is from AmeriCares. They sent this a couple of years ago. You've got some copy at the top. You've got a link that says, "Here's a look at what your support lets us do every day." And it links out to a video that you can go watch, and you can see the impact of that donations have made throughout the year. And in the copy, they're giving credit to the donor for the work. They're saying, while Thanksgiving is a uniquely American tradition, there are people around the world who are also giving thanks today. Today, we're thankful for you, our amazing supporters. We are passionate and honored to do this work and so grateful that you support us. So they're just purely expressing gratitude. So that's one example of what this can look like. Food for the Hungry has sent this out in the past. This is an impact report, but it's sent around Thanksgiving with the specific purpose of being grateful to donors for the work that they have done. And it gives me, the recipient, the credit. It says, "Hi, Nathan. Even though your holiday may have looked a bit different this year, I hope that you and your family still enjoyed a happy Thanksgiving. Your gracious support of Food for the Hungry helps raise people living in poverty." You scroll down, they tell some stories, and it says, because of your partnership with Food for the Hungry, it helps save her children from malnutrition. Again, they're telling stories and giving me the credit for the work that was done. You keep scrolling down, you can click through to see more, read more about the impact report, and really get a deeper understanding of the work that's gone on this year. And again, they're expressing gratitude, giving me the credit for the work. That's the point of this email, to lean into your donors, cultivate them, and show them the impact without asking for a donation. This is a no strings attached type of email. Here's how effective this can be. This is not an email, this is actually a postcard experiment, but in this organization basically split their donor file in half for the length of the year-end period. And version A, so half their donor file, just got the normal cadence of year-end communication. That included some emails, it included some direct mail and sort of the usual stuff. Version B, the second group, received the same cadence of communication that version A did, but they also got a postcard. It was a Thanksgiving postcard that says a Thanksgiving message for you, inserted their first name. Inside, you would open it up, it would express gratitude for you for being a donor and being a supporter. There was a link you could actually type in to go watch a video from the president of the organization expressing gratitude for you, the donor, and for the supporter. But it wasn't really a donation appeal, it was just a cultivation piece. But what they found, looking at the giving over the length of the year-end season, was that the people that received this postcard were 204% more likely to actually make a year-end donation from a single postcard. This is the power of priming. This is the power of cultivation. You don't see the payoff right away. You see it down the road. It comes earlier in the campaign to make the appeals that come later all the more effective. Let's look at one more example of a priming email. This is one that we call the free offer. The point of this email is to give your donors something of value for free. And we're not just sending out like premium offers. It's not like a gift of any size type of deal. We're trying to give them something of value that they can basically go download. They can fill out a form in order to receive something like an ebook, or it could be a course, or it could be a video series. It has to be some sort of exchange of value where they give you an email address and in return you give them some sort of free content. Like an ebook is probably the easiest option. Again, this is not like get this free when you give a gift. This is just something for free. And I'll show you what the model looks like here. It uses that instant donation page we talked about with the survey a moment ago. But you're going to send an email. That email is going to lead to a landing page. In this case, the organization is called the Texas State Historical Association. It says, get the Portable Handbook of Texas ebook for free. You can read about it. You can fill out a form. You can hit the button, and it's going to send you an email that has the PDF of this ebook for you to read. So you go to this landing page, you end up filling out the form, and then on the back end of that, again, instead of the normal confirmation page that just says, hey, thanks, will you share this on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, it's an instant donation page that moves right into a donation appeal with a form on the page to give. And we use this as kind of our go-to model for donor acquisition throughout the course of the year, but it can be really effective during the year-end season as well. It's often a model that we use on Giving Tuesday as a means of giving something to your donors first on Giving Tuesday, and then leading into a donation appeal that way. Now, there's an experiment here I'd like to show you because you may wonder, if I have their email address already, I'm sending them an email, why do I need them to go fill out a form to give me their email address again? That doesn't make sense. But we've had the same question as well. And we've put this to the test to see, does having this form here actually make what comes next all the more effective? Does it help someone feel like what they're getting is more valuable, so much that they might actually give more or have a higher likelihood of giving? And so we put it to the test. So in this case, you would get the email, you'd click the link, and it would send you straight to the donation page that this time says, thank you. Your free copy of the ebook is on its way to your email address, and then it moves straight into the donation appeal. So you don't have to go to a landing page to fill out a form. We put this to the test, version A being the email to landing page to instant donation page, version B being the email straight to a donation page. And here's what we found. Cutting out that middle step actually led to a 41% decrease in donations and a 31, almost 32% decrease in average gift size. Because without that middle step of actually filling out the form, reading the page, saying, yes, I want this, you don't feel like it's as much value that you're receiving back. And so the likelihood of you actually feeling gratitude for the free gift and then expressing that back through your generosity is lower. So you need this additional step to make sure someone understands the value of the free gift that you're giving them. And all in all, as we're talking about priming and framing and cultivation, I want you to keep this in mind, that donors are relational people, just like you and just like me. And so we have to invest in the relationship before we ask them for money. We often say that people give to people, not to email machines, not to clever marketing. They give to people that they know and trust. And so we have to lean into the relationship. Now, let's move on to number 2. How do you make your donation appeals? How do you send them? How do you make them most effective? And I want to challenge you to create personal donation appeals. We'll look at an example of that in a moment. But the goal of this is to really kind of evoke the same feelings that come up when you look at this piece of mail that Charlie here has gotten in the mail. It's got a handwritten name and address on it. I bet you the open rate of a piece of mail like this is like 100% unless it gets lost or something in the mail. Who's not going to open a piece of mail that looks really human and personalized and from someone that they know and trust? We want to evoke the same feelings in the inbox as much as we possibly can. And one email I would love for you to send this season as an appeal is what we call the year-end overview email, which is fairly straightforward, but the goal of it is this. You want to explain the stakes heading into the new year and then ask clearly for a donation right away. Use your copy in this email to talk about some of the accomplishments from this past year. What's maybe changed? And as you're looking out into 2023, what are the things that you see kind of on the horizon that need to be addressed, that need to be tackled? What are some of the new problems that are coming up related to your cause that need donations in order to make an impact on? So we're talking about some accomplishments and we're laying out the stakes for the new year. You're starting to build your case for support as to why donations are actually needed, not just because there's a deadline, but because there's a clear need. Let's look at an example. This is kind of an older email example. You can see from the date in here, I believe it's from. Keep it in here because I just think it's powerful. There's lots of opportunity likely to optimize and improve it, but I think just the statement of the problem at the beginning is really clear. And so I like it as an example. But here's what it says right off the top. It starts talking about a clear problem. UN agencies have just announced that the number of hungry people in the world has increased for the first time this century. Huge problem. We're witnessing it firsthand. Right now, 7 million people are on the brink of famine in Yemen. In South Sudan, millions more are preparing for what's being called the hungriest start to a year on record there. Now, not every organization on this webinar, on this call today, can talk about such a grand problem necessarily. Maybe you can. Maybe your problem is more localized and more nuanced. But this is a really important point that we have to articulate what the problem is. If there's no problem to solve, then there is no reason to give. And so as we're explaining the stakes going into the new year, what are the things we're trying to achieve? You can have goals, but what's the problem that they're actually solving? We have to articulate that first. And then they move into the solution. And again, this is where there's probably more room to optimize. We'll look at a more optimized example in a moment, but it says this: in emergency zones around the world, there's a dire need for supplies, safe sanitation, and clean water. Those are some tangible, practical things that would help improve and move towards a solution to the problem. They move down, they say, we need your support to help people survive these crises, to ensure we can keep successful poverty fighting efforts in more than 90 countries going strong. The only way we can do both, respond to this hunger crisis while also building long-term solutions to poverty, is with your help. So they're starting to get a little bit around to what's the actual impact that you can make with your gift. There's lots of room to be more specific and more clear, maybe a little bit more tangible, but that's where they're starting to go, is what's the impact your gift can actually make. Then they move towards a bit of an incentive. It says, make your tax-deductible gift to Oxfam. That's kind of an incentive, but it's an incentive that every other organization can actually use during this year-end season as well. Everyone has the same tax deduction option, and everyone has the same deadline. So what actually is going to stand out? There might be some other incentive opportunities. Do you have a matching opportunity? You can heighten urgency with a countdown clock. Is there a free gift that you can get with a donation? Or is there a threshold? I've got to give $75 in order to get a specific premium or thank you gift. What other types of incentives can you insert into your appeal? Keeping in mind that an incentive is not a new reason to give. It doesn't answer sort of the why question around giving. What it can do, though, is help someone understand why they should give now rather than later, or maybe give at a little bit higher of an amount. So you can always insert an incentive here, but then you have to give a clear call to action. And that's what's here. Help reach our $3.5 million goal before December 31st. Now, I want to show you one experiment because oftentimes when we look at examples like this, there's a question of, a lot of these examples look kind of like plain text. Is that good? Is that bad? What do you do with that? What do you do about design? And this is an example of a hypothesis we've tested many, many, many times over, which is, should we be sending more emails that look like they come from real human beings? If we're trying to be authentic in our communications and build a relationship, what if we got rid of the design and sent an email that looked more like something that you and I could send each other through Gmail? More of a plain text style email. And so version A, you can see it here on your screen, has a logo. It's got a donate button. It's got a big hero image. It's got a progress bar. If you were to scroll down further, you would see some more text formatting. You'd see a big donate HTML button. You'd see an image of the actual sender down below. Lots of design elements going on. Version B gets rid of almost all of the design elements. But what stays the same is the copy and the messaging and the appeal. Everything else about this email is exactly the same. But by removing the design elements, they actually saw a 29% increase in donations. So when I talk about sending a personal appeal, I want your copy to be warm and personal and authentic, but make sure that your design reflects that as well, that it's an authentic kind of human relationship in the inbox that you're trying to build, not just more marketing. I want to show you a more optimized example from a more civilized age, if you will. Again, I mentioned I'm a Star Wars nerd, so no shame here. We're gonna go with a Star Wars example. In a Star Wars, obviously, well, if you haven't seen the movie, I guess I'll give you some of the background. So in Star Wars, you've got the Rebel Alliance, and they're trying to bring down the evil galactic empire. They're the small band of rebels that's trying to gain influence in the galaxy and kind of put all the pieces together to go build a Starfleet and go blow up the Death Star. That's the goal. They've done it once, and they got to go do it again as you get further into the movies and all that stuff. For a small group of rebels to make such an impact in the galaxy, you have to have a pretty strong fundraising program. And so I'd imagine that they would send a more optimized email appeal, something like this. And I say I share this because, one, it's entertaining for me and it's fun, but two, I want you to see that this type of a framework, moving from the problem to solution to impact, incentive, call to action, can be applied to literally any organization. Not just Oxfam, it can be applied to the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars. It can be applied to your organization as well. So go with me here. Although the Death Star has been destroyed, Imperial troops have driven the rebel forces from their hidden base and pursued them across the galaxy. This means more innocent civilians of what used to be our glorious republic have been enslaved. They've been forced to work under the tyranny of the Empire. They're killing millions of life forms across the galaxy. Huge problem, and a clearly defined problem. They move forward, and they says, but there's still reason for hope. Your Rebel Alliance is preparing an all-out assault on the second Death Star with aims to end this galactic civil war once and for all. That's a huge solution, but it's the solution that's needed to solve the problem. However, as a donor, potential donor to this cause, it might be really hard for me to see how my donation is going to go blow up the Death Star. It's hard for me to make that jump when I'm thinking about my 50 credit or $50 donation. So we have to articulate what's the impact of your gift. And so we move further down. It says, that's where I need your help. First name, call them by their name. Your donation will help provide blasters for our ground troops, food to fuel the heroes on board cruisers, critical equipment, and help us blast through the Starfleet. I can see that my donation can help provide those things. I can't give you $50 and then go, solve the ultimate problem, but I can see how my gift makes an impact. We have to make sure that our donors can see how their gift makes an impact on the cause. Even if their $100, $50, $200, whatever they're giving isn't going to go solve the macro problem, how does my gift make an impact on the solution that's going to go solve the problem that I care about? And then you can insert an incentive. When you donate 100 credits, the Rebel Alliance will send you a free piece of the first Death Star as a commemorative token and reminder of your critical role in the fight to save the galaxy. Not a new reason to give, but a reason you might give at a certain level. You might give more just to get this premium offer. And then you move towards a call to action. Will you consider donating to the Alliance today? You can make your donation here. Keep in mind, this call to action is not asking them to go solve the problem. It doesn't say, will you consider blowing up the Death Star today? It's asking you to take the right next step. Consider donating. You can make your donation here. Don't ask people to stand with you. Don't ask people to go solve the big problem you're trying to solve. Ask them to take the next step, which is to donate. And then make sure your email is sent from a believable human being. In this case, Princess Leia is advocating for this cause on a daily basis. She's the most believable person to be sending this email. Who's the right person in your organization to be sending an appeal? It might not be the founder or the CEO of the organization. That might not be the most believable person to be in the inbox. It probably is actually you, because you're the one here trying to figure out how to write a better email. So consider sending this from an actual person, and that the best person might actually be you. Keep this in mind as a larger principle. Donors are logical people, just like you and just like me, and they need real reasons. We need real reasons why we should give. We can't just rely on the deadline. We can't just rely on the tax deduction. I need to know, across the landscape of nonprofits that I could possibly give to, why is it worth giving? What type of an impact can I actually make? And can I trust that I can make an impact on something I care about through you? So we have to give them real reasons why they should give. Now, we've talked about priming and framing and the cultivation and the impact that can make on donations. We've looked at some appeals. And this one example of an appeal, how to structure your case for support in a personal appeal. And as you get to the end of a campaign, you want to start sending more of these closer type of emails. Now, I'm not actually like a huge MLB fan or a huge baseball fan. I was really a huge White Sox fan in 2005, which I know I'm kind of like a fair weather fan, but I had decided at the beginning of the year that I wanted to get into baseball. And my grandpa was really into the White Sox. So I said, I'll follow the White Sox. It turns out they won the World Series that year, and it was incredible. It got really boring after that when they weren't good in 2006. And so I kind of gave up on it. But during that season, they had a closing pitcher. His name was Bobby Jenks. And you knew at the end of the game, if their manager walked out to the mound and has a conversation with the pitcher, and then he turns around, he does this, he's calling for the big guy, and he's calling for Bobby Jenks. And Bobby Jenks would come out, and he would throw 100+ mile-an-hour fastballs, and he'd close out the game. And it was incredible. It was this wild ride, and it was a ton of fun. But if they put Bobby Jenks in at the beginning of the game, he might throw a couple 100 mile-an-hour fastballs and get some strikeouts, very early on. But his arm's going to tire out like real quick, and that shoulder's going to get sore, and then his pitches are going to start to slow down, and then people are going to start hitting those things out of the park. You can't put a closer in at the beginning of the game because it's not as effective. And the same thing is true with this type of an email in our fundraising campaigns. So we're going to look at a couple examples of what a closer email is, but keep in mind, we can't put these at the beginning. They are most effective, and they're only effective when you're really close to a deadline. So closing email number 1, the deadline. The goal of this is to remind donors of the impending deadline without rehashing all the reasons to give that you've been articulating over the course of the season. We're just trying to remind people that the deadline is coming really soon. You got to make sure you get your gift in. Here's one example. I think this example is really interesting and kind of cool from the Special Olympics, because everything in this email does one of 2 things. And I'll highlight everything for you here. So everything in red says midnight tomorrow. You got a countdown clock. Everything in red is focused on driving urgency. From the countdown, midnight tomorrow, give now, give now, give now, give before tonight, give before midnight tonight. It's trying to drive urgency. Time is running out to actually make your gift. And then everything else in this email that I'm highlighting here for you in green is trying to add an incentive. So you've got high urgency, and now you've got this incentive that your gift is going to be tripled. Triple the support, triple the joy, tripled. You get down below into the bullet points, help 3 times as many athletes, help 3 times as many athletes, help 3 times as many athletes. Even if you look at the URL down there at the bottom, it says specialolympics.org/triple your gift. So you've got high levels of urgency and you've got high levels of incentive. They're trying to help you understand why you should give now rather than later. And they're trying to help you understand why you should give more rather than less. They're not rehashing all the core reasons why you should give in the first place. They're just trying to drive urgency and incentive. And here's why that might be effective at the end of a campaign. This organization ran a test on one of these deadline style emails. Version A had 1,146 characters, largely focused on the reasons why you should give in the first place. Version B had a lot fewer characters, less copy. It was more focused on being a quick reminder of the deadline, less focused on trying to rehash all the reasons why they should give. So version B had a 32% decrease in the amount of value proposition copy, if you will, but it led to a 30% increase in donations. So when you're really close to a deadline, you can see sort of the timestamp on this. December 31st, there's 17 hours till the deadline. When you're on that last day or two of the campaign, and you can do this as you get close to the deadline on Giving Tuesday as well, don't rehash all the reasons to give. Just remind someone that the deadline is coming. Maybe you've got a little bit of value proposition copy, but the focus is reminding them of the deadline. And closer email number 2 is the reminder about the reminder. Essentially, I'll show you an example of what that actually means. But the goal of this is to send a personal email to make sure that someone didn't miss the deadline email that you just sent a little bit ago. So here's what it might look like. This example from World Concern, I think is really good. It's a great model to follow. It says, Pam, just wanted to send you a quick note to make sure you receive this email. I don't want you to miss out on the chance to double your gift. God bless, Jacinta. You can see the timestamp on it. This is sent on December 31st at 10 p.m. So they're about 2 hours out from the actual deadline. And then down below is just a copy and paste of the original deadline email. Again, it's not a lot of copy in this email either, but it has a little bit more. Today's your last chance to double your gift. You'll help children and families. Please, while there's still time, click here and give. So this email looks like a forward type of an email that's just reminding someone that the deadline's really coming. Make sure that you got your gift in. It's the same sort of premise working on a project with other people, or you sent somebody an email and you're waiting on them to respond or waiting on them to get their part of it done. You might shoot them an email as you're getting close to the deadline and say, hey, did you see this? You don't rehash everything and all the details. You just shoot them a quick reminder to say, hey, just want to make sure you saw this. We're getting close to the deadline. It's the same type of feeling. We've used the same sort of tactic even in promoting things like a webinar. And so in version A of this email, what we were doing was sending a resend out to people who hadn't signed up yet, but we thought might want to. And we'd sort of rehash the reasons why someone should sign up. We maybe would take a new angle, a new spin on the reasons why, trying to address it from a different point of view or different motivation. But we wondered, what if we just sent this forward style email? And so what it looked like was this. At the top, as similar to what we just saw, a quick little note. It just says, I emailed you last week. Noticed you hadn't responded. Will you be joining us for the webinar next week? Here's a link to sign up. And then down below is just a copy paste of the original email. So it's way easier to set up. You don't have to write brand new copy. And here was the result. By sending this forward style email, it actually led to a 20% increase in people signing up. So I want you to keep this principle in mind that donors, busy people. You're busy, I'm busy, everybody's busy. And sometimes we just forget, and you just need a simple reminder. So we don't have to overthink it. We can just be a kind human and send a simple reminder. Now, here's your slightly more advanced digital year-end fundraising playbook. Number 1, I want you to send cultivating emails. Don't only send appeals this season. Lean into cultivation. I don't have a perfect ratio for you of how many cultivation emails you should send versus appeals. A 3-to-1 is probably a good balance, at least half and half. Any less than that, you're probably not cultivating enough. But make sure you cultivate people during the year-end season. Don't just send appeals. Secondly, when you do send appeals, make sure that they are personal, that they sound personal, that they come from a human being, that they look like an authentic email and that they have real, tangible, logical reasons as to why someone should give, not just focusing on the deadline as the reason to give, but clearly articulating a problem, solution, the impact that someone can make with a gift. Third, I want you to send clear reminders as you get towards those deadlines, both the end of the day on Giving Tuesday, as well as like December 30th, December 31st, it's December 31st evening. Give clear reminders to give now. And don't forget, in all of it, to communicate like a real, authentic human being. I have one more thing for you, and it is another Star Wars reference. Sorry, not sorry. It's kind of a Star Wars reference because we're talking about The Force Awakens. So those of you kind of in the Star Wars world, it's not like a true Star Wars movie, but okay. In this movie, if you're not familiar with it, they spend a good portion of it just trying to find the map to a guy named Luke Skywalker, who's a Jedi Master who they believe can help them take down the evil First Order. And they're looking for this map to Luke. And when they finally find it, they're excited. They want to open it. They want to see, where's Luke? We can finally find him and get him to come help us. They open it up and they realize, we can't use this map. It's the most important piece of the puzzle, but we don't know where it fits in the larger galaxy. It's a critical piece, but it's really missing the larger picture. And it's at the end of the movie, R2-D2 like magically wakes up and he has the whole rest of the star map just missing this one little piece. How convenient. And so they put the maps together and it works. They can go track down Luke Skywalker. The reason we're talking about this is because I think your year-end campaign is exactly the same. It's the map to Luke Skywalker. It is one of the most critical pieces of your fundraising during the year. You see how much revenue is at stake, and there's so much opportunity to bring in donations during the season. It's one of the most critical pieces, but it's only going to be effective if you've been doing the good work throughout the rest of the season to cultivate and steward donors well. If you haven't done anything to go build donor relationships throughout the rest of the year, your year-end season is not going to be nearly as effective as it could be next year after you've spent a year, cultivating and pouring into your donors. But I don't say that to kind of make you feel like at a loss if you haven't been doing this well. I say that because I think you can start now and still actually see some wins. Here's my cultivation tip for you. Start sending a weekly cultivation email to your donors. That doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. I'll show you one example that hopefully puts some of your fears at ease. Version A, well, I'll start here. This organization was seeing a dip in their email engagement. People starting to not open, not click through, not donate. They're seeing engagement drop off. And so they wondered, what if we just send more cultivation? So they split their file in half. And version A received the same cadence of email communication that they had been on the same sort of calendar and pacing. Version B, the other half of the group, started receiving a single cultivation email every single week, I believe sent on Fridays. And it looked like this. It's a plain text style email, so you don't need a bunch of email design, so it's simple that way. It's not a donation appeal. All it does is share a quick little story and a link to go read an article or read a blog post. It's just keeping the donor involved in the work that's going on a weekly basis. Now, looking at the 6-month revenue from these two different groups, what they found was that people who received this extra additional cultivation email every week led to a 42% increase in online revenue. So just by sending more cultivation, no additional appeals, no different value proposition, just cultivation led to a dramatic increase in the likelihood of these people giving and the amounts by which they gave. You don't have to even go link people to an article every time. You can just send a quick story that you heard this week about some impact out in the field or from some of the programs that you're implementing. Maybe you heard a quick testimonial that you thought might be impactful. Drop that in an email, send it out, and you'll see that this cultivation can lead to some dramatic impacts in giving over time. So please lean into cultivation this season and then especially going into 2023 as well. I told you we have a whole course on this. There's so much more that we can unpack, lots of other email examples we can dive into, and we will if you choose to activate our year-end course free for the next 30 days. You can go to nextafter.com/year-end course, or you can pull out your phone, scan that QR code if you'd like to. You can get access to this course for free for 30 days. Work through all 4 sessions. It talks about everything from kind of some year-end benchmarking to how you structure a high urgency campaign. We look at what makes an email appeal most effective, even in more depth than we did today. Then we look at the email timeline, all 17 emails that you can kind of pick and choose and build your campaign. And then finally, what do you do on your website? How do you optimize your website to get more traffic to your page and ultimately lead to greater conversions on your donation page as well? So please check that out. It's a free resource for you this season because we just want you to have the best year-end season you've ever had. That's my goal, and that's my hope for you. Thank you so much. I believe we have a little bit of time for questions.
We do. Thanks so much, Nathan. And
Absolutely.
Sorry, everyone, for the confusion at the beginning with the chat. I'm glad to see it. I got it working for everyone. So just want to take a couple questions here. So Teresa asked, is there any data regarding age and response to emails? I'm hearing a lot of my friends who are younger than 30 saying they don't check their email.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have a demographic breakdown for you. As someone who is in that age group, I don't check my email ever. And I do for work. I check my work email, and then I check my personal email like maybe once a week, and it's mostly because I'm looking for updates from like my kids' school about newsletter for kindergarten and that sort of thing. So there may be some validity to that. That said, email is still one of the most effective drivers for conversion online. So as we look at all the organizations that we work with and beyond, what we consistently see is that email has the highest conversion rate because it's a controlled audience. You control the communication stream. You're not just paying for ads or something. You have people who have opted into communication with you. They want to hear from you. And so we see conversion rates are really, really high. Even if someone doesn't give directly from an email, the email might actually prompt them to go online later or have a conversation over here that could lead to additional giving. So I wouldn't disregard and throw out email just because younger demographics might not be using it as much. The data, the analytics still show us that email is an incredibly powerful driver of your online fundraising.
Totally. Another question from Melanie. So the personal email format reflects leading with a problem to solve. Are there metrics for leaning towards optimism and tone versus pessimism? If we say, here's what we achieved this year, please give so we can keep up the great work, is that also a good strategy?
I would do both. And in fact, that's definitely a hypothesis that you can test because we have seen it and I can see it going both ways, depending on your audience, depending on your topic. Some people are going to respond to some maybe some more doom and gloom type of language. Some others may want to see that you've made some real accomplishments because then I can get behind that. So it's something that you can test within your own audience. It's also might be something that you talk about in 2 different emails. If you go through that course, we do have a specific email that's called the accomplishments email that really focuses on what you're talking about here, which is what are the things that we have done? What are the goals that we have achieved? Almost as a means of building trust so that you can say, as we set these targets for next year, you can trust that we're going to do the good work to go try to hit them and make the plans that are going to make them be effective. So those might be 2 totally different emails that you send because they might address 2 very different motivations.
Yeah, and I think like Nathan has been saying and showing throughout this, I think testing different things is super important. Don't get discouraged if you send one email out and you're not seeing the conversion you wanted to. Change it up, change the subject lines. Like Nathan said, just change the strategy a little bit, change the tone, how personalized it is, things like that. And until you find your sweet spot, I think every organization is probably a little different. Everyone has a little bit of a different audience, who their donors are. So you'll get there. Change is fine. Adjusting is fine. You'll get there in the end.
Yeah. And not everybody has the capacity or the ability to A/B test, but it's one of the most effective ways to actually go give your donors a voice and let them tell you through the response and through the data, what actually resonates with them the most. So as much as you can, changing approaching your campaign from a variety of angles is really good, but testing within that to figure out what really is going to be most effective is ideal.
Yeah, totally. Do we have any other questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. And I just want to remind everyone, since I got a little scattered at the beginning here with the chat function not working, but this webinar was recorded. So we will, once the recording has finished, we will send it out to everyone So please, you can review it in your own time, share with your teams, kind of go backwards. And then Nathan's information is in at the end as well. We'll make sure you have all that so you can sign up if you want to take the course, or reach out to Nathan and NextAfter for more information or continued learning for sure.
Perfect.
Well, yeah. Well, it looks like there may be not any other questions. Sounds like maybe you did a good job. Like we said, third, fourth time, I think you're hitting your stride on this topic for the year.
It's all just sinking in. And please go activate that course. I mean, there's no strings attached there. Go activate that. It's totally free for 30 days. You can dive deeper, jump into the spots that are going to be most applicable for you. But again, we're just here to help you and to share what we're learning. Anything that I can do to be a resource for you this season, I want to do that. So we're rooting for you here always at NextAfter and hoping you have your best campaign yet.
Awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. I know these topics are just so timely for our customers. I think fundraising, there's so many different ways to go at it. And this is one way. And I hope it really helps everyone who attended today. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you all so much. It's great to see you all. Awesome. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Have a great day.